Hi, I am out of excuses. It's been a long time. Happy New Year. A lot of reasons I have not made anything in a very long time. A lot of it's just because I haven't been inspired and there's no point in me creating anything that I don't even like myself. So yeah, that's mostly why. I've also just been incredibly busy. Work's kept me running around. I went traveling for a little bit. Yeah, just living life, questioning what actually interests me. And I found that for a little while making videos just didn't satisfy me anymore or feel very fulfilling. But I think what has always kept me coming back and what's always re-inspired me is getting messages from people. And a lot of people have been messaging and commenting recently on previous videos and saying how much I helped them or how much they enjoyed it. I think that plus feeling a little bit more creatively stimulated has encouraged me to come back, as well as certain life changes, which is why I'm here today, what I'm here to talk to you about. First of all, I hope you're all well. Have you made your New Year's resolutions yet? That's okay, you don't need to. You can literally make resolutions whenever you want. The beginning of the year doesn't determine whether anything actually changes or not. Some people like to use it as a reset button, but you can literally reset your life anytime you want. Just saying. And that's a lovely segue into what I want to talk to you guys about today. From what I've been reading recently, I think a lot of people will probably relate to this. A lot of people who are on birth control will probably relate to this. If not, if you're on birth control and you have no side effects, that's amazing. I'm really happy for you. Unfortunately, not the case for me. So yeah, I'll just give a little background as to why I'm even making this video, like my experience with birth control and like how I even got into it in the first place. So the year was 2020. I started looking into taking birth control for a few reasons. First of all, my skin wasn't doing that well, and I knew a lot of people in my life who had started taking the pill because it made their skin better. And it, I guess in a way that makes sense, it like regulates your hormones a bit more and you're less likely to be prone to breakouts and stuff like that. It does not always work for everyone. But that was for me initially a major thing because I was getting incredibly self-conscious when my skin isn't good. And I've never had very good skin and I was never allowed to go on the pill when I was younger. Being 20 and free of any parental control, I thought, well, maybe that'll help control my pimples for a bit. I also wanted more regular periods. I felt that would make my life a bit easier, and also lighter periods because I had quite painful, heavy periods, and I thought this would help, which it did. And also, the reason a lot of people started is because I'd been considering becoming a bit more sexually active, and I thought, better be safe. Those were kind of the three primary reasons why I started looking into it. I started looking into it around May, June, and by the end of June, I had purchased my first 2 months supply. And now I decided on Yasmin. Well, it seems to be a very popular choice among young women. I chose it for a few reasons, a lot of which I don't think are incredibly justifiable. I first of all chose Yasmin because it was meant to be very good for your skin. So I was like, well, perfect. It's also one of the few pills where there's a lesser chance of you gaining weight on it. This was kind of important to me because I'd heard how a lot of people had gained weight while being on the pill. I've had issues with my body in the past, and I didn't really want to go through that again. So I thought, well, best just be safe and go for that one where I won't have intense body dysmorphia all the time. And even if it didn't change my body, I think it was. I don't think that's an incredibly justifiable reason anymore, but that was my mindset at the time. I did not want to have my body changed by this, except for the fact that it would stop me from breaking out. That was the only change I wanted, as well as like more regular periods, which obviously it would grant you. Like you could plan it to the day. That was one thing I really enjoyed, was that I would take my pill in a way so that I would always start my periods on Mondays, they'd end on Thursdays. It was really fun. I could almost plan it like to the hour. Now, I do want to say, I did kind of look into the side effects a little bit before I started taking the pill, but not as much as I should have, and I didn't take it as seriously as I should have because for some reason I thought that I was the exception. In my mind, it was like, well, these people may have experienced these things, but I know myself, I'm going to be fine. And a lot of what I saw was mental health issues, that people experience a bit more anxiety, heightened anxiety, depression, worsened depression symptoms. They really suffered from this. And I was feeling pretty okay with myself. I was pretty convinced I was going to be fine. And then I kind of just forgot about ever having read that. And I started taking the pill. I felt fine. I actually broke out more for the first month and a half, I would say. I probably had the worst skin I've ever had. And that really freaked me out. But I looked it up and it was like, oh, just have to keep going. It'll clear up. Obviously, you're taking hormones. Your body's like, what the fuck? It just needs a little time to adjust and then it'll balance out. And it did. Eventually, it did. After a month and a half, my skin started getting better. It started clearing up. I started feeling a little more confident because I'd actually not been confident at all in how I was looking. And I'd also just started dating my boyfriend. So I was feeling very self-conscious about my appearance. But I was also more convinced than ever that I should stay on the pill because, now I was regularly really sexually active and I don't really want to be pregnant. In my mind, I thought it was a good precaution to take. Lockdown was happening around this time. I think now we're at about September, October 2020. Because of lockdown, I could no longer do my job. And I also, because I was staying with vulnerable family members, either choose to not see my boyfriend for a few months until lockdown ended or move in with him. He was like, no, of course, like I would rather see you every day than not see you at all. So we moved in together. So I was staying in this house with him for 2 months and it was really lovely. We got on very well. I did notice I started having more mood swings around this time, and I thought maybe it was just because I didn't have personal space, like as much personal space as I'm used to. I'm always used to having my own room, and this was no longer the case. I thought it was just me. Then I went home to South Africa for 2 months after this, and it was around when I got home and had a lot more space to myself that I started feeling even worse, and that was very confusing to me. I've never felt so genuinely depressed in my entire life. I felt awful. I felt like a very hard, bitter human being. I felt like I didn't want to live anymore. I felt like there was no point in anything. I was incredibly miserable. I would be very emotionless and numb during the day. I don't think I smiled or laughed genuinely for weeks. I just wasn't very happy. And then like at night, I would just not be able to sleep, complete insomnia. I would be miserable and sobbing and just distraught. This crying and this sadness was not connected to anything. I've always been able to connect being upset with something, like a person or an event, or, you know, there's some feeling there with the crying, but I was just crying for no apparent reason, and it just continued like that for several weeks. I would be like completely numb and emotionless during the day, and then at night just like completely fall apart. That was completely terrifying to me, and in my mind I was like, I guess I'm depressed. I didn't really know what to do. I wasn't sure what was causing this. I went to the doctor when I was home and I told her I was on Yasmin, and she said, well, that's probably causing it. And I was like, oh, okay, so what do I do? Like, do I have to stop? I didn't really want to stop because like now my skin was looking nice and I was feeling like it was maybe a good thing to be on it. And she was like, oh no, don't worry, I'm on Yasmin too, and you know, I had similar side effects, so I took this other medication alongside it, and it just completely straightens you out. Like she asked if I felt quote unquote psychotic, and I was like, I don't really know. And she was like, well, that's probably, us ladies, we feel psychotic when we're on certain medications, and especially around the time of your period. And she made it sound so normal, and I was just so scared and confused as to like why this was normal. But I thought, well, she's a doctor, she's on this herself, so I guess this is the logical answer. I guess this, like, a lot of people have this issue. So she gave me this medication. I would not recommend doing this because first of all, Yasmin has a very high chance of giving you a blood clot if you have any history of heart disease, if you have high blood pressure. I've heard stories of even very healthy individuals who've been taking this suddenly have blood clots, which was completely unexpected and just should never have happened. So yeah, Yasmin's it's 3 times more likely than I think any other birth control to give you a blood clot. And this medication that I was given to take alongside it is also meant to cause blood clots. So not a very good combination. I don't think that was very well thought out. The more I think about it now, the more I'm a bit concerned that I was ever putting that in my body. But basically how the medication worked is I would take, for 3 weeks, I would take Yasmin, and then in those 7 days where you take like the sugar pills, I would take 5 days worth of Difastin, so 1 pill a day. So basically during my period, I would have Difastin, and that's meant to like balance any hormones and stuff and not cause so many psychotic symptoms, as the doctor said. Yeah, so I started taking that in January. It very much helped. I felt a lot more balanced as a person. I felt like a little bit like myself again, so that was really good. And I got a 6-month supply. I went back to the UK. I took it for 6 months, called up my GP in London, thinking I could just, get a refill prescription. Maybe I could get the prescription or the recommendation from my doctor in South Africa and pass it on to the GP here. I was just going to try and make it work so that I could, get more of this stuff. The doctor was like, she said no. She said I couldn't take Difastin and she wouldn't prescribe me Difastin. And basically it's actually illegal in the UK to take it if you're under 60, mostly because of the side effects it can have on you, which is a bit scary. But basically she said that she wouldn't be able to prescribe it to me. There was no substitute that she could prescribe to me for this, and that her recommendation was that I go 2 months without having it and just being on Yasmin. And then if I feel really awful, we'll pick it up from there and we'll see what we can do. For some reason, I wasn't even alarmed by the fact that it was illegal here. I was just very frustrated because I was like, well, I don't really want to go back to how I was feeling before. I gave it a month. I felt okay after not having to fast in after my period, and I thought, okay, maybe this is fine. Maybe all I needed was just like 6 months of fasting and now it's balanced out my hormones and I'm fine. And I think the symptoms crept back up on me so subtly that I didn't even really notice until quite recently, and I started having quite heightened anxiety again. I started feeling a bit more despondent. I had a lot of mood swings. I do have a lot of mood swings, which I think is very unusual for me, and I would struggle to control my emotions a lot. Like, I very much struggle to regulate my emotions. And now also, like, alongside this whole year of 2021, I decided to start therapy. You know, like, there were certain events and certain reasons as to why I definitely should have started therapy. So I'm glad I did, and I'm very grateful I did, but I always found that I was not making the progress that I wanted to, and I got very frustrated with myself because I was like, I'm putting on all this work, I'm putting in all this energy and effort into like changing myself and my mindset, but I still feel very anxious and very stressed, and I get angry very easily, and it feels very unfair because it would target people around me, including my boyfriend, who I really didn't want to hurt. And I thought, relationship wise, maybe it's because I have an anxious attachment style, which I do, but I think it was heavily exacerbated by the pill. I just couldn't comprehend like how this was happening, and I felt like I'd worked through everything I needed to work through, but I still wasn't fully seeing a change in myself. There was some change, and I do feel like a bit of a different person after therapy, and I'm very grateful for it, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who can financially afford it, which I know isn't the case for everyone. I just could not figure out why this was happening to me. I started seeing a lot of TikToks around this time, I think probably around September 2021. I started seeing a lot of TikToks where women would say that they had stopped the pill after years of being on it to see what their natural hormones were like, and they were happier and they were more vibrant and alive and felt more creative and felt more like themselves than they had in years. You know, that's obviously not always the case for everyone, but I started feeling quite torn at this point. I started thinking, well, maybe, once again revisiting the idea, maybe it's the pill's fault. Not solely. I'm taking some personal responsibility for my own actions, but maybe that's what's causing me to feel almost like out of control of how I react and how I feel about things, and I feel almost crazy sometimes with the thoughts and emotions that come up, and the heavy mood swings just feel so erratic and so not me and really not who I used to be. And I saw quite a lot of these TikToks. It's also because the algorithm notices, like, obviously when you click on one thing, it's like, oh, you want to see a million of this kind of thing? Okay. So it was a lot of confirmation bias for me, I think, during that period. I still wasn't sure whether to stop because, you know, it's very convenient to be on the pill when you have a partner, well, one that can impregnate you at least. I knew he actually would never have minded, and he would have wanted me to just do what's best for myself, but for some reason that really stuck in my mind, as well as my skin, like two big things for me. I was like, I don't know, I'm sure I can get through this. My life got so busy, and it just filled with so many social events and doing gym all the time and trying to maintain like my own creative hobbies and stuff like that I just didn't even think about it. I just never had a chance to even like revisit that thought again. I felt kind of okay, but I think it was mostly just because I was very busy. I think I very intentionally kept myself very busy because I found that I had less time to feel how I genuinely was feeling. And I think it's only within the last 3 weeks, predominantly around the time when I started my holidays, that I started feeling a bit more down, a bit more numb, a bit more mood swingy. It just didn't go away. I'd found the trend to be was that feeling would normally last a week, specifically the week after my period, every month. So it would just be a week a month. I know I'd feel a bit down. And so I kind of expected it in December after my period, but then it just continued for 2 more weeks than normal. It just became unbearable. I felt like I couldn't fully enjoy my holiday. I had a great time. I loved it. It was great, but I couldn't fully enjoy it because I was just so numb and irritable and like struggled to actually laugh at things. And I just didn't feel like a human. I was like, who even am I? I just feel like this ball of bitterness, and it's disgusting. And I strongly dislike this side of me. And I started thinking, well, maybe it's not even me. Maybe it really is the pill. And I think I stopped being in denial. There was so much drawing back to this one thing, and I thought, well, it's either this or I probably have to go onto antidepressants, and rather than taking more medication, maybe I should just try stopping my medication, specifically the pill. I looked up a lot of stuff around the Yasmin side effects to further encourage myself to actually stop and to not back out. It was actually quite scary how much I resonated with the horror stories in there where people's anxiety was very much heightened. They felt incredibly depressed, suicidal. I saw a statistic saying that 42% of women on Yasmin feel more anxious and depressed once they started, which is really scary. And I think this just, to me, pointed out kind of the wider issue outside of myself, that this is happening for so many women. And I started seeing how people would refer to the pill as the depression pill. Why is this such an encouraged thing? I know that there was a birth control pill for men. They just would not circulate it because it caused intense depression in men. It was a very similar pill to the one that we take. I think I just felt very frustrated, and I thought that that's kind of why I felt like I wanted to make this, because I feel like there are a lot of women out there who are going through the exact same thing as me and maybe don't really want to acknowledge that it's because of the pill, I didn't, or maybe haven't even thought about it, or maybe just need that little extra nudge to just do what's best for you. I think it has some great pros. I think if you find the right pill for you that doesn't give you any negative side effects or any that you feel you can't deal with, and you prefer being on the pill, I think that's completely fine. And I think my mistake was assuming I could handle more than I actually could, and disregarding a lot of the statistics and a lot of the side effects that I read before taking it. I think there needs to be a lot more awareness spread around the short-term and long-term side effects of taking the birth control pill, because I don't think that's very spoken about. No doctor ever told me this. I was never really spoken to about the side effects, and I was quite young when I was 20 when I decided to start taking it. It's not like I had years and years of understanding and in-depth research around this myself. I just knew that I was allowed to take it, and a doctor very easily gave it to me after checking my blood pressure. It's not the only way. It's not the only way to live. There are so many other methods than taking this. And, if you're comfortable taking it and if you're happy with it, then completely go for it. But I know for me, it just did not work, and I should never have started taking it. And I'm not sure if I regret it, because I feel like I would have wanted to do it at some point in my life, just because it has such a wide appeal and it's very common and it seems very easy and simple. So I'm glad I had this experience, but I'm also glad I'm stopping when I am. I've decided to stop now. I think tomorrow is my last day, because I wanted to finish. I only had a week left by the time I decided this, so I thought, rather than fucking up my system even more, I will finish the pack and then I will be done. I was also looking at a lot of resources recently. There's a book called, I think it's called The Pill, or The Power of the Pill. I'll link it below, but it's meant to be incredibly informative. And if you aren't sure as to whether the pill is the right decision or not for you, and you're still trying to decide, it'll give you a lot more guidance. There's also so much more out there now. Maisie, who speaks about period power, how, working with your natural hormones, you can get into a really great routine of life, and you can really make sure that you're practicing the right self-care at the right time of the month, and when's the week that you're really going to be able to power through and really just get a lot of shit done, when maybe you need to take a bit more of a break. I think understanding a lot more about how our body actually works and how our hormones work and how to work best with that, I think will lead to fewer women looking for ways to manage it externally, such as taking birth control pills. It also depends on the reasons why you want to do it. I think there are certain people with certain health conditions where you're probably going to lead a much more comfortable life if you take the pill, and that's completely understandable. I had ovarian cysts in 2019, and I was prescribed a month of, I'm not sure what it was called, but it was a birth control pill, and I had to take that for a month. And that was actually, I guess, technically my first interaction with birth control, but I only did it for a month, and that was meant to help with the ovarian cysts. And it's incredibly common. A lot of women get them. About 90% of women or something get ovarian cysts in their life, but sometimes it just doesn't affect them and they don't even notice, and it just comes and goes away. For other women, it causes a lot of pain. I was throwing up for days, and it was incredibly painful, and I had to go to the hospital, and then a gynecologist, who was kind of a shitty gynecologist, but we won't get into that. He was a man who invalidated a lot of experiences. He prescribed me on this to help rectify the ovarian cyst, and it did help, and they went away. It might be the best thing for you to be on the pill. I'm not trying to demonize it. I'm not trying to discourage you from using it if you really think it is the best thing for you, and I'm not trying to invalidate women or people who do take the pill. I just really thought it would be valuable to share my experience because I don't hear enough about people talking about their negative experiences with it. I'm very excited to see the person I am without birth control. Yeah, I just want to speak about like why I made this decision, why maybe you should think about making that decision, and if you don't resonate with this at all, that's completely fine. If you are gonna take the pill, or if you are taking the pill, I think the most important thing really is just being very self-aware and maybe even keeping track of how you're feeling. Just keep track of where your moods are at, and I feel like this self-awareness and this self-reflection will really allow you to see whether you're actually being influenced by the hormones, by the pill. I think it'll give you a very good indicator as to whether this is actually something you want to continue doing. Sometimes it's not always the pill, but I do feel like it can exacerbate existing conditions. I would especially say if you do already have anxiety, or if you do have pre-existing depression before taking the pill, I'd say be very careful, because there are certain ones I think that you can take that are friendly with these mental conditions or health conditions, but I would say be very wary. I'm excited to not be on this anymore. I'm excited to not have to remember every morning to take it. But yeah, obviously if you are going to stop and you are having sex, please do still be careful. There are a lot of other options, and I would really recommend doing research. I don't think just blindly following what anyone recommends you is the best idea, because you know your body best, and I think if you look into it, you can really ascertain what works for you, because a doctor is not going to know absolutely everything about you, and even if they do know a lot about you, I don't think they're always going to make the best decision for you. Some doctors are amazing and really would, others don't really give a shit and really wouldn't take certain things into consideration. So I would say just look out for yourself, and please be careful if you've had similar stories. Well, I'm so sorry. I feel like, you know, you can almost feel quite bitter about it because it feels like you were robbed of that time. I do feel like I lost a year and a half of being happy. I think there's a lot of good that can come from it. At least for me, I have a much better understanding of who I am. I now feel like I have the opportunity to tell people about my experience and maybe influence other people's lives. You know, maybe people would have made different decisions if I didn't speak about this. Something that might discourage people from wanting to stop taking the pill is because their partner is not supportive of them stopping. And that is absolutely horrific. And don't want no short dick man, as a popular song goes. You have complete power over it. You can decide whatever you want to do. You can decide whether you think something is good for you or not. And if you're not supported with that by your partner, that is a massive red flag. If your partner is not understanding and loving and caring, and you can't sit down and have a conversation with them about this, it's not good. You should never let anyone around you dictate whether you make this decision or not, because it is a really big decision, and I don't think that's emphasized enough, that deciding whether or not to take the birth control pill is actually and what kind of contraception you want to use in general is actually a very huge decision, and it will impact you, and you are the main person who will be impacted if you are the one taking something or having something implanted. And so you need to be completely comfortable with what you're doing, and I just wanted to put that out there because I think that's another thing that people don't hear enough. And even I have the most supporting, amazing partner, and I was worried about disappointing him by saying that I was stopping the pill. And I just think maybe as women we're incredibly apologetic, and we just always want to serve others and do the best for others and what works for them and what they prefer. But ultimately this is our livelihoods and our happiness and our bodies, and we got to make the decisions around them. And if you're not supported with that, then find someone else or just be by yourself, because that sounds like a much more bearable existence. I know that's a lot easier said than done, but I think it definitely needs to be said, because I know there is that external pressure. I think it's a disgusting expectation. I just had to have that last minute rant because I panicked that I hadn't mentioned this, because I knew it was actually very important to mention. And I know that actually played on my mind a lot when I was considering stopping, was like, how is he going to take this? Which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But I know it's a reality for a lot of people. So I hope this helped. Hello again. It is a few months later, which is pretty crazy. I feel like I recorded this yesterday, so it's really strange to be filming a second part to it. I guess this is just necessary to conclude the video and just share my experience of having been off the pill for 2 months. I thought that might be useful, might be helpful. I actually thought it might be valuable to not wear any makeup or anything to show you how I'm physically doing having been off the pill, because as you may remember, one of my biggest worries was that getting off the pill would mean I would start breaking out again. Yeah, for the first 2 weeks after being off the pill, I would say the second week, my skin did start getting a bit bad. I did have a few breakouts. I think it was probably the worst breakout I've had in a very long time. But once that cleared up, my skin is like relatively clear. Like, I don't know if you can tell, I have like one like spot, but other than that, I'm actually doing fine. It's been 2 months, and for the past 3-4 weeks it's been exactly like this. So I'm like quite relieved. At the same time, I don't think I would have minded as much if I had broken out, because onto the next thing was like how it mentally impacted me. About a week after being off the pill, I just felt like a cloud just like lifted off of my head. I felt so mellow and so okay. I didn't feel like I was being controlled by my emotions anymore, but also that my emotions weren't so intense. Like, they weren't dominating my entire life and controlling everything I did and the way I reacted in situations. I felt like I was once again in control of my emotions and they weren't controlling me. That was crazy. Like, that was worth any breakout I could have had, even if it was still going on now. Just the mental relief was so amazing. I would say I felt like a lot happier, a lot more relaxed, far less anxious. I wasn't overthinking as much. I didn't have insomnia really as much. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before, but I did suffer from insomnia just from the anxiety and overthinking. I haven't really experienced that over the past 2 months, maybe like once. And that's just really from work stress and not really because of my mental state. So yeah, mentally I'm doing a lot better. I mean, like, I'm not perfect. I definitely have had ups and downs. I've had like moments when I'm incredibly stressed or very anxious, and I might have like a slight breakdown here and there, but I think those are more normal and more explainable and often due to external factors. Like, I've had a really stressful, intense day and something a little shitty happens and I'm just upset about it, and that's normal and that's human, and I can cry about that and express myself and release it and you know, process it. That's normal. You know, when that happens every few weeks, once a month, that's completely normal, and to me that's not worrying. And so although I have had a couple like breakdowns or like moments of upset, but I found them to be very few and far between and a lot more reasonable and rational and explainable. And I know this may sound a bit shitty. I don't think you always have to have an explanation for feeling what you feel, but I do think that when it came to taking the pill, it felt too much. It felt like far too much. Like, there was too much emotion, and now it's okay. Like, it doesn't ruin my day. I can be upset about something and express myself in however, like, you know, whatever form I need to, either by like going on a run or crying or talking about it with someone, and then it's okay, and then I can move on, and it's not hovering over me, and I'm not obsessing over it, and it's not like controlling the outcome of my day, which is what I was finding all the time when I was on the pill. So that's really great, and I think it just further like confirms that it really was exacerbating emotions that were pre-existing. So these like times when I'm having these breakdowns and stuff, it's just that times 10 on when I was on the pill, and it would be like 10 times as long and feel 10 times as shitty, and that's just how it was every time there was something slightly wrong or inconvenient. So yeah, I think that's just the biggest one I wanted to touch on, was that mentally I'm doing so much better and feeling so much better within myself. I feel a lot more creative, a lot more alert. I've also just felt more energetic. Like, I wake up in the mornings, I'm not as tired, and I'm not sure if that is connected to the pill. I'm not sure. It may just be a placebo effect. But honestly, if it is a placebo effect, I'm really grateful for it. I've been able to put a lot more energy and time into my own thing, which I've really enjoyed, and I don't really feel like I need to find like escapes from life because I'm enjoying life at the moment. I don't think there's much else I need to touch on except that I guess the sex thing, yes, of course, is very manageable. It's very possible to manage without being on the pill. There's not much more I need to say to that, really. I don't think that was even like a question or a shadow of a doubt in the first place. Hi, it's editing timer here. Sorry, I just wanted to add very quickly because I feel like I didn't actually really touch on this and it had been a concern of mine. But yeah, how I actually felt like during my period.
Physically not actually the best, very painful. My periods have been really painful since I've been off the pill. I've had two since being off the pill, and I'm not sure if it's just a matter of time and the pain will ease up as like my body balances out, or this is just forever. But yeah, the first 2 days of my period each month have been very, very painful. Yeah, I mean, it goes away with paracetamol and stuff, but I felt like I did need to acknowledge that. So that hasn't been great. But in regard to like my mental health during that time, like during my period time, it's actually been a lot better. I feel happy, I feel fine, I feel normal. So that's good, apart from being like tearful like here and there, like that's completely normal. I've not felt like super low, and not as intensely as I used to, so that's good. And then as to like the how regular my periods are, and how trackable they are, actually surprisingly very trackable. I've been using the app Flow. Yeah, it works really well. It's tracked my period like to the day, which is really impressive. So yeah, and it's also really accurate with symptoms. Like I'll get a buzz on my phone being like, "You're going to experience very painful cramps today," and it's right. Yep, I definitely did. Or you're going to feel very bloated today, or today you're going to feel snacky, and it's almost always accurate. So that's fun. I feel like the more you update it with symptoms and moods and feelings, and the more accurate it is, and the more accurate it is like throughout your cycle. So that's quite fun. So yeah, actually that worry like was just not a worry at all. My periods still very easily trackable. I think I was just worried that I wouldn't be able to keep tabs, but because I have an app, it's fine. I kind of sound like I'm like a walking ad for Flow, but it is a pretty decent app. It works really well. But yeah, I mean, I guess overall, yeah, my periods are more painful, but once again, just like in my mind, so worth it. Like I would so take that, like being in pain, like 1 or 2 days a month over like being miserable all the time.
Yeah, everything is fine. Like any worries I had are completely appeased. I'm just really glad I have stopped, honestly. If you're considering stopping, maybe this is your sign, but definitely do some research into it yourself. Like I said previously, that everyone's different. So how it affected me may not be how it will affect you. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that this was helpful in some way or form. And maybe you can share it with someone who might be going through a similar experience, or someone who's considering going on the pill. Goodbye.